Hello and welcome everyone to Legal Cheek's virtual event, Beyond the Law Firm, Why Qualifying as an In-House Lawyer Might Be Right for You. Now, this event is run in partnership with BARBRI, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Al Khalil. I'm an events coordinator at Legal Cheek, and today I'm joined by a great panel to discuss everything related to becoming an in-house lawyer. So with me, I have Rob Dudley, who is the head of employability and engagement at BARBRI. I've got Emma Levin, who's the head of legal at OneBright. I've got Chris McFarlane, who's the VP and Regional Deputy General Counsel at Peloton Interactive. And finally, I've got Ben Ovio, who's the competition paralegal at Vodafone. Now, Rob is going to lead this session, but before I hand over to him, I want to do a bit of housekeeping so that everybody knows what to expect from the event. We have a panel discussion which is taking place right now. This will go till 5 p.m. and in it, we will go over different areas related to today's topic. After that, we have a networking session where you can network with our speakers as well as the BARBRI SQE experts that will have a different booth. And that will run from 5 to 5:30 p.m. And finally, there's also a competition involved, and you can participate in that afterwards once we're done with this event today, but I will mention the details at the end of this session. So without further ado, I'm going to take myself off stage and I'm going to hand it over to Rob Dudley. Over to you, Rob.
Thank you, Saad. That's a very, very nice welcome. And I'd like to welcome everybody else for joining today's session, which I'm sure is going to be very interesting, highly insightful, and I do hope you enjoy it. As Saad said, I am the head of employability and engagement at BARBRI. We are today talking about the in-house sector and more specifically why practicing in-house could be your best career move ever. I certainly understand the in-house legal sector to be a really, really important part of the overall legal sector, with over a quarter of all lawyers in the UK now working in-house. So today gives us a great opportunity to find out more about it, the opportunities that are on offer for you, particularly as future lawyers. And hopefully you'll come away feeling suitably informed and encouraged and motivated to consider the in-house sector as you navigate your way into and through your legal career. So as Saad said, delighted to be joined by an incredible panel today. So Emma, Benny and Chris, thank you so much for sparing the time to contribute to this. I wondered if I might just be able to start off by asking the panelists to introduce themselves more fully. Perhaps just we understand your name and your company, the company that you work for, but I just wondered if you could perhaps tell us a little bit about your role at each of your organizations and possibly a little fun fact as well to get us started. Perhaps I can start with you, Benny.
Hi everyone, thank you for the introduction, Rob. So yeah, as mentioned, I'm a paralegal in Vodafone UK's competition law team, and my role essentially involves supporting the lawyers within our team and also non-lawyers, and I assist with the merger work streams. As some of you might be aware, the proposed merger with 3UK, and also just normal competition law queries that come through to our team. And a fun fact, so I guess a fun fact is that I completed my LLB outside of the UK, sort of across 2 jurisdictions, and hopefully I get a chance to discuss that a little bit more later. So, yeah.
Fantastic, Benny, thank you. And I can see that actually a lot of people who are joining today are joining from all over the world. So there may well be students or future lawyers who are looking to qualify in multiple jurisdictions as well. So perhaps we can touch upon that a bit later. Perhaps if I can go on to Chris then.
Hi, so my name's Chris and I run the international legal team at Peloton, the exercise company, which I'm sure people may be aware of. I have a team of 6 lawyers based across the UK, Germany, Australia and Taiwan. And I sit on the international leadership team. So a lot of what I do is helping with risk assessment, with strategy, managing the team, helping to guide on various issues that come up. It's quite a it's quite a diverse business because we deal with content, we deal with retail, we deal with consumer, direct to consumer issues. So it's a very broad role, which keeps things interesting. I've been there about 6 years, and I've been in-house for probably over 20 years in various different organizations. I did actually work at Vodafone in the past as well, Benny, but way before you were there. My fun fact would be my first live, I love listening to live music, going to concerts. My first live music concert was at Wembley Arena, and it was MC Hammer. So that dates me.
I'm sure, I mean, I know who MC Hammer is, Chris, but I suspect many of those who are on this today won't have a clue who you're talking about. All we need to say is trousers. That's what he was famous for. So more on MC Hammer perhaps later. Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate it. And finally, Emma.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. So I'm Emma. I'm head of legal at a company called BARBRI, which is the largest private outpatient provider of mental health services. I've done multiple in-house roles. I moved in-house on qualification, so very early on in my career. I worked at Barclays in investment banking. I worked at Condé Nast, working for Vogue and Vanity Fair and that kind of thing, which was all very exciting. And then decided I wanted to be like a sole legal counsel. So that means essentially that you're the only lawyer in a company. I worked for a very small electric vehicle software startup as their only lawyer for a while, doing lots of legal stuff, but lots of non-legal stuff as well, like compliance, helping them set objectives, environmental accreditations. It was a mixture of everything, and decided I quite liked being part of a small legal team. So moved to BARBRI about a year ago now. And again, sort of a very small legal team. So there's me, and then there's a consultant working 2 days a week. My fun fact, I guess there's two. You can't see the bottom half of me, but I'm quite heavily pregnant. It's fun fact number one. So I'm due a little girl in the summer. And my second fun fact would be that in my teenage years, I was in a rock band very briefly, which everyone seems to think, you know, with the blonde hair and stuff like that wasn't you, but I had like black hair and a red streak. We've moved on from that phase of life. Again, it's probably too old for the people on the call to remember those days when people had black hair and side fringes, but maybe they're coming back. We'll see.
Nice. So there's a retro theme to this section. But obviously that was pre-practice then, Emma, that you were rocking that look. So excellent.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. About 18, 19, I decided to go for the blonde instead. It was probably a better look.
Oh, fantastic. Well, look, thank you all for sharing that information with us. You've all got diverse backgrounds in terms of what you've done up to what you currently do and find yourself in now. But certainly for me and us as BARBRI Law School, as a legal careers practitioner myself, I've seen a really big shift, sort of increased shift really, particularly since the introduction of the SQE and the more flexible sort of qualifying work experience model for students really seeking opportunities in-house. Which we're very encouraged by. Really, a lot of them seeing it as just as valuable as what we've always seen within private practice. Certainly, when I went through law school donkeys years ago, the in-house market it didn't sort of market itself as an opportunity necessarily. We were all very much focused on trying to get a training contract within a law firm. But I'm really, really pleased that the market has obviously opened up so much more and it's offering so many more opportunities to students. I wondered from each of you, of course, students are going to be looking at multiple options and multiple routes and multiple roles within the legal sector. But I wondered if you could possibly tell us a little bit about why you took the route that you did take. So that we've got a little bit more insight into why you found yourself where you are now. Emma, perhaps if I can start with you, as you were the last one to finish.
Yeah, sounds good. So the honest answer is I just loved it. I was working in a law firm at the time, and you had the option of going on secondment for 6 months. You could either try and get an international secondment, and my mum wasn't very well at the time, so I decided I didn't want to go abroad. Or you could go for a client secondment, or you could do another seat at the firm. And I thought, oh, client secondment, that sounds quite good. Let's go see something else. And went to work at Barclays, and within the first 4 or 5 weeks of being there, thought, I just love this. Like, I'm sort of on the front line, getting stuck in. I always describe being an in-house lawyer as more like being a GP rather than like a surgeon in the law firm. So like you're the sort of GP of, you've sort of got to understand a little bit of everything, which I really enjoyed. It was fast paced, and I was on the phone, and it was all very exciting. So yeah, the honest answer is I just loved the role of being an in-house lawyer. You can probably tell I'm quite an outgoing person. It suited me very much to be engaging with sort of your clients every day in the company. And so I stuck with it and sort of became a generalist through my career. So
fabulous, thank you. And Chris, was that the same for you? Did you like the variety, I suppose, that the in-house sector brought you?
I'd always sort of had it in my head that I might like to be an in-house lawyer. I qualified during the dot-com bubble of 2000, 2001. And so I was involved in, and I was an IP lawyer then, so I was involved in advising lots of companies that were growing and startups and those kinds of things. And it seemed like an interesting area. And I hadn't really planned when I would make that move in-house, but it was always something kind of on the horizon that I thought I might want to do. And I actually ended up moving in-house by chance. My wife and I moved to Australia. She's a doctor and she got a job out there. So we moved to Australia. I assumed I'd get a job in another law firm there. I couldn't get it. There were no jobs around. The one opportunity that I got was in-house with a company called Hitachi Data Systems. And so that's when I started my in-house journey. And similarly to what Emma said, I really just enjoyed it a lot more. I felt closer to the client, the internal client, closer to the business. You could see the impact of the work that you were doing much more, rather than working on an esoteric kind of legal thing. And I was probably more of a commercially minded person than a black letter law person. I've never been sort of super excited by legal stuff, more by business stuff. So I like that element. And I also enjoy the fact that you have a lot of different people in the business that you need to interact with. So you need to be able to think through the legal issue and be able to communicate it in a way that everybody understands. And that can be, the CEO, or it can be the software engineer, or it can be the person that's delivering your exercise bike to somebody. If there are issues, you need to be able to put them in a way that everybody understands. So that was also a kind of challenge of the in-house world that I enjoy, and I've went in-house and have never looked back. So yeah, I've had multiple roles across lots of different in-house companies.
Gosh, I'm surprised you came back from Australia though, Chris. So many people I know who've gone to Australia never come home.
Yeah, well, it was a close run thing. It's still a point of debate potentially in the family, but my eldest daughter was born there, and all our families here, so we decided to come back.
Nice. Thank you. And Benny, over to you. How did you find yourself in Vodafone? I know, of course, you're very, very recently have completed your SQE. So was that the intention? Was it to always stay in-house whilst you were doing your SQE?
So I think it was just curiosity, really, how I got into Vodafone. I don't think I had a grand plan of not even qualifying. That wasn't like a thing I just sort of thought out. So after my LLB, I did an LLM in European law at King's College. And so that was like a 1-year program. And it was a pivotal one because everyone in my class was sort of like working professionals, or you're just surrounded by incredible, professors and academics, and just the wealth of knowledge across various disciplines. And I think it was at that point I was like, maybe it would be a good idea to qualify as a lawyer, because it was just interest and curiosity that I'd been studying law. So I just went with that, and I didn't really give much thought as to how I wanted to use the knowledge and that I'd obtained to progress. So it was a great year for me. And I think it was during that year that was sort of like the start of the SQE, like introduction, like 2020, 2021. And there was this, it was like a talk that the careers team had organized, and BARBRI were involved. I remember as Emily Allen, she came in and showed us examples of what the SQE exam was like. So I sort of made a mental note of BARBRI, and I was like, if I get to that point where I want to start preparing for the exams, and I know who to contact. So it wasn't necessarily just like it just happened. So I did 1 year at a boutique competition law firm, and I loved it. And following on from that, I did the SQE1 exams, and after that, Vodafone announced the proposed merger with 3UK, and I saw the role, and I was just like, this is great. I really enjoyed the transactional work that I did previously, and I'd love to get involved. And that was basically it.
Fantastic. So do you see your future at Vodafone?
Yes, I would love to continue. It's been a great place to work, and you're just supported by great lawyers who know their stuff, and they're willing to help you, and it's just a supportive community, and everyone's just really nice. And I've had a great time.
And you mentioned you were working, Benny, at a boutique competition law firm for a little while.
Yes.
Given you've had the experience of both private practice and in-house, what do you really see as the sort of, from your own experience, what do you feel are kind of the benefits of working in-house compared to private practice for you, and any particular downsides?
I think it's nice to see how like the support and advice that you're given sort of translates into this project or whatever, like the final outcome is, you get to see it through. Whereas if you're like in private practice, what I found was you would help, but you didn't really know what the help was going towards, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So it's nice just to see how things play out, and you get to build great connections and relationship with the stakeholders. And after you've helped them with one thing, they might reach out to you again to help with something else. So it's really nice just to build that relationship with people in different parts of the business. So that's something I've really enjoyed. Downsides, I don't really personally, I don't have any, because for me, experience is experience. Everything you sort of draw on, you're able to build and get better. So I didn't really have any like negative experiences. But I don't know, maybe Emma and Chris might want to, they probably have a lot more.
They well do.
Yeah.
Thank you, Benny. Well, Chris, you mentioned the, I suppose, being able to see the impact of the work that you do on the business more. Is that very much one of the benefits you see of working in-house compared to private practice?
Yeah, I think so. I felt I worked in private practice for 5 years, did a training contract for 2 years, and then was 3 years after that. And it was a big firm. So similarly to what Benny has described, that you tended to be working on a small piece of a big deal. So you didn't really see the big picture. You didn't really see that much of how it affected the company. And I think being in the business, being part of it, understanding the products and services that it offers, understanding what is important to the business and how your advice sort of can affect that, and how you help achieve the company's goals, is something that I have found to be good and interesting. And like, I've worked in IT sales companies, software companies, where you're integral to the business hitting its number for the quarter. They tend to be very revenue focused, and you're a big part of that machine, and that it can be gratifying to help the business land a big deal, and you see how that translates to the overall results, which as a law firm lawyer, you don't really get that experience. I also think, depending on the organization, you can get quite a big breadth of work in-house as well. So I've kind of become much more of a generalist and less of an expert. And I think somebody asked in the comments, can you refer stuff to an expert from your in-house client? And yes, we do that all the time. So we work with the business, but we also work with external lawyers, law firms a lot. So we will probably spot issues, spot risks, and if we need to get more information on a specific topic where there's an expert in a outside law firm, we would instruct them and then help bring that advice back into the business and set it out in a way that the business understands or is relevant and knowing the products and the services better than the external lawyers.
How do you manage those relationships, Chris, with those external law firms? How does that work for an in-house practitioner?
So we appointed them through a panel process. So you get them to come to present to you and present their expertise. And we were looking at law firms in particular areas. So at Peloton, it was kind of media, marketing, advertising, consumer rights, consumer law, those kinds of things. So you invite them in to come and talk about what they do. A big part for us also is, how do they do it? What's the culture? What are the behaviors that they have of their lawyers? And I think as an in-house lawyer who is in-house lawyers instruct external counsel. So we can control the spend that to different firms. And I think you therefore have influence. And I think it's an important thing in the legal profession as a whole, where you can influence D&I policies, you can influence mental well-being, you can influence all of these things by who you choose to instruct and whether they have good policies in place, whether they actually abide by those policies. So those were all things that we looked at when we appointed our panel. And then in terms of managing the relationship, we talk with them a lot. So we're on the phone with them for advice, but we'll have regular reviews about how the work is going. We obviously get billed regularly by them as well. So you'll have discussions around that, but it is really a two-way conversation. I find it works best. You get to know the relationship partner very well, but I also like to meet the teams that are working on the work for us. So rather than just, my experience of private practice was you never got anywhere near a client until you were senior and a partner. So I like to say, well, look, if you've got these people working on the deal, I want to meet them. I want them to understand that if they've got a question, they can give me a call. Like, I'm just another person like anybody else. I'm not the client who's this kind of mystical being. So, let's get a relationship. So that's how we try to manage it. We're very open. We try to make sure that they give us the information we need and vice versa. But it's just a ongoing, regular meetings. We probably have a more formal review each year, but that tends to be how we run it.
No, thank you. And Emma, does that sort of sit with you in terms of similar approach to the work that you're doing at OneBright? Do you find that in your sort of typical day, you may be instructing external firms, you might be interacting with other parts of the business and understanding more about the sort of commercial, I suppose, impact of the work that you're doing that has on the business? Would that resonate with you as well as the work you do?
Yeah, definitely. So I don't think there's sort of a typical day working in-house. You sort of log on every day at 9 and go, okay, what's today going to be? I think for us personally, we're a relatively small company. So I'm not talking to external law firms every day, but at least probably once a week. Sometimes more, sometimes less, but I'm in control of that. But in terms of talking to the business, I mean, 3 to 4 times an hour. It's the kind of, certainly, so I'm, as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm sole legal counsel, so I do legal across the board for the business, everything from IP, contracts, employment, stuff that might not necessarily be legal, but maybe has some legal related issues or ethical questions. So yeah, I mean, a typical hour might be, you get a message saying, oh, have you got 5 minutes to just chat about a quick employment question, and off you go down that route. So every day is different, which keeps it very exciting, which I really like. I think there's been some questions around, how do you know whether you're more of a generalist, or how do you know if you're more of a specialist? And I think the answer is just get as much experience as you can, talk to as many people as you can. I think when I was looking at roles when I was at law school, I always thought, oh, the lawyers sort of won't want to talk to me. But that isn't the case at all. Like, we're all very friendly. We all have our own LinkedIns. Like, I respond to all my messages. And I think we are definitely willing to help you, like if you have specific questions and that kind of thing. I appreciate that getting experience is very hard, but keep an eye out for those one-day things, you know, stuff like this today even, and meeting different people and hearing different experiences is so helpful in just understanding, like, actually, where do I see myself in 10 years? Like, what do I actually want my day-to-day to look like is a really important question, I think, to answer.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it will fit with some people very, very comfortably, and for others, it sounds probably very overwhelming, having to manage multiple sort of stakeholders and be pulled in, as you were just mentioning, being pulled into different departments, being asked very different questions on a regular basis. Some people like to be in one lane, others like, you know, a full range of different opportunities, which is great. I wonder, you know, obviously I'm hearing that you're obviously navigating sort of possibly multiple different areas of law on quite a regular basis, if not several times a day, I'm sure. I wonder what you find, aside from that, as some of the biggest challenges, I suppose, in your role.
The biggest challenge is time. Always time, I think. So I would say in general that the working hours of being in-house are better than in law firms, but I think there is a bit of a misconception that it's an easy job. I would say at any one time I have at least 50 things on a to-do list that I could be doing, and I'm looking down that list and going, okay, what gets prioritized today? And you know, you wish you could have 12, 14 hours in a day at any one time. But, you know, the flip side of that is, as I say, it's exciting. You learn very quickly what really is important, what's less important. Some things sit on the to-do list for 2 years. But that comes with time, and it's different. In-house roles will be different. I'm sure Benny's experience, for example, would be very different to that. But I guess that what I'm saying is in-house roles are different. I think you still do have a chunkier to-do list. You're jumping between tasks more, regardless of what bit of the in-house sector you're in. But there is a place for everyone in the in-house sector. You can still specialise and be a specialist competition lawyer. You can still specialise and find a company that's just absolutely, you know, if you're interested in gaming, there will be a company out there where you can show off your interest in gaming and law. So I think there is so much opportunity out there that I don't think students necessarily see.
No, that's very helpful, actually. And actually, Benny, if I may ask you, just on Emma's point around the work-life balance aspect, we always hear, or have historically heard, that there tends to be a better work-life balance working in-house than there is within private practice. With your experience, both you and Chris, have you found that is actually the case from your own experience, or is that an absolute myth?
Chris, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think you have more control in-house. I think as a private practice lawyer, you are a service provider. So your whole kind of existence is providing a good service and a high quality legal service to your clients, and you're kind of expected to be there when your clients want you to be there. And something, you know, if you have a broad range of clients, chances are somebody always has something that's urgent. I think when you have one client in-house, you can set your boundaries a bit more easily. You can be a little bit more in control of where you do your work from. So I think hybrid working has become much more of a thing. And I think in-house, that's even more so than in private practice, where, you know, yes, it does happen, but I think it's not as common that you could work 2 days in the office and 3 days at home, or whatever that may be. I think it's probably a little bit more flexible around what times you can come and go. And certainly the way I run my teams is I don't really mind whether you do your work in the office, what time you do your work. The thing that's important to me is that you take care, you're taking care of your internal clients, and you're doing, a good job for them, whether that means you get up really early because you want to go to a gym class at 9 o'clock, or you log on later because you've needed to pick your children up from nursery, or whatever that is. That doesn't matter. And I think we should be thinking about that balance is different for everybody, and we should be able to try to make that work for everybody. Sure. I think that's probably the advantage that in-house gives you, where it's still a bit more of a, private practice law is a bit more of a service industry.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Benny, is that something that you feel quite similar to?
I think from my experience, well, it's been a bit different for our team, because we've been working on the merger, and then I've also had studying for the SQE2 on the side. So it hasn't been sort of like a normal experience to draw from. But I think sort of like what Chris was saying, we have a hybrid approach to working. So it's like 2 days in the office and then 3 days remotely. And there's different offices as well. So I'll go into the London office, I'll go into Newbury, where most of my team are based. But there isn't, I don't think there's the pressure that you have to be online for hours past when you have to, as long as you've completed the work that you need to get done. That's sort of the important thing. So that's just my experience though. So
yeah. No,
and I think within house, there is always, as Emma kind of touched on with her to-do list, there's always more stuff you can be doing.
Yeah. And
it's a question of, prioritizing that, working out what's important, working out what's urgent, working out what's not. And I think more so kind of earlier on in your career in-house, you probably have to manage that a little bit more yourself. Whereas as a junior associate in a law firm, you basically get given the work that you need to do, and the partner will give you the work and they will sort of supervise you, but it comes in a very kind of linear way. Whereas the way I manage my teams is that I want them to go out into the business and make relationships with people in the business, so that the business people will come to them with their issues and instruct them. And of course, I will be behind them, supporting them and helping them, guiding them in the right direction. But they own the work, they own the relationship with the business. And I think that's a difference as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you touch upon those aspects that I would probably call, quite important skills, things like time management and prioritization and both managing your own activity, but also your own time is a challenge in itself. And Chris, you mentioned earlier, you referenced having a bit more of a sort of commercial mindset as an individual. And I wondered whether, for all of you, whether you found that that working in-house requires perhaps a different approach or a different set of skills when it comes to the work that you do, as opposed to the work that private practitioners would do. Emma, I wonder if you'd like to comment on that.
Yes, so I would say commercial awareness wasn't something that came naturally to me in any way. I certainly wasn't someone who was, reading the FT or really even understanding the business use when I was at university, which I thought was required. I think commercial awareness in-house means something a little bit different, which is, do you fully understand how the business you're in works? Do you understand the products or services they're delivering? Do you understand the people, and do you have good relationships with the people in different departments? And do you understand the sort of company and its competitors and the little world it's in? I think I always used to think commercial awareness was like understanding what a bond was or how the loan markets, worked. And it's just, the reality is you need to be interested in how your business runs. And if you've got that right, and you can spend that time and you want to spend that time learning that stuff and building relationships with other people who aren't lawyers in a company. That's the key skill that I think you need as an in-house lawyer.
Okay.
And
Benny, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think it also helps. So when you get certain requests come in, it helps when you understand it from their perspective, because it's easy just to like give a legal response to what's been asked. But it's, do you understand what that stakeholder is trying to achieve? Because that will also influence how you respond. And I remember Chris talking about communication styles as well, and being able to break that down to a level that they understand and that's able to benefit them in their whatever the query they might be. So I think that's really important, just understanding sort of the industry, the business, what the stakeholder and what their concerns are, what they're trying to achieve, because it changes everything, and a great way to also build relationships with them as well.
Chris, do you have anything to add to that? Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, I think those elements of understanding the business really well and the product that you sell is key in how you apply your knowledge of the law, because it enables you to understand what the real risks are to the business. So, you as an external advisor, you will be advising on, well, legally you need to do this. As an internal person, you may say, well, look, legally the 100% right answer is to do this, but actually we don't think the risk in not being 100% legally compliant here is very large, and we actually think we'll get more revenue or better publicity or more traction in the market from doing something one way. So you're balancing the commercial and business risks versus the legal risks and coming to an answer with the business. And you're not there to say, no, you can't do this because the law says you can't. You're there to find a solution of how can we do this to help the business move forward with its aims. And I think that's another piece of the in-house kind of experience that I enjoy, that sort of problem solving, trying to be creative, trying to always find a way to do something. I think it's very rare that I've had an experience where I've had to kind of say no to the business and stop something from happening. It does happen from time to time in regulatory reasons or trade compliance reasons or things like that. But there's usually a way of doing something, and it may not be the first way that somebody's come to with you, but you can help find a solution.
Thank you, Chris. We've had quite a lot of questions coming in, which I'm trying to keep on top of, but perhaps if I can just ask you perhaps one last question before we then get on to some of the questions that are being posed to us on the system. How, I know a few of you have obviously worked both in private practice and in other in-house teams. I just wondered whether there are any other sort of skills, I suppose, that you gained whilst you were in private practice that were the most valuable to you when you moved in-house. Was there anything in particular that you could pinpoint? Benny, I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, I can start. I think one thing that I learned that helped me when I joined Vodafone, it goes back to communication. It's just understanding people's styles of communicating, because they might not necessarily tell you and be explicit. It's like, this is how I like things being done, but you sort of pick it up as you work with them. And I noticed that whilst I was working at my previous law firm, and that helped when I moved in-house, because as you build these relationships, you understand how people like things presented, how they like just communicating, I think, would be really important, and being able to adapt and adjust and essentially just sort of mirror and sort of match people's energy, if that makes sense. Yes.
That makes sense. That's helpful. And if I can just ask, actually, there's a question that's come in just on that point, Benny. There's a question from Amara, who's asked whether you would advise perhaps working for a law firm before working as an in-house lawyer. Do you have an opinion on that from your own experience?
That's just the way I did it, but I don't think that's the only way you can do it, because I know people that I work with that have worked in Vodafone, so they went through like the graduate scheme and then joined the legal team, and so it's it's truly just up to you how you decide to navigate your
Personal
career.
choice.
Because I don't think, like I was saying, experience is experience, and you can build this up in like different environments as long as it aligns with what works for you and like who you are and just how best you learn. So I don't think there's like a right or wrong way to do things. Yeah.
I think it's still more common that people will train in private practice. There are more, as I think we touched on at the start, there are more 3/4 of the lawyers are probably private practice lawyers. So it's more likely that you'd be able to get a training contract in a private practice place, work there for a bit, and then move in-house. So I think it's still the more common route. That said, with the SQE and coming in, there are more opportunities to go straight into in-house roles. And there are, like, for example, we work with Flex Legal, and who BARBRI works with as well, who provide a training contract and place their trainees into in-house jobs. So they have a network of in-house people that they work with, and they place their trainees straight into those. So I think that route is becoming more common. And the other way is, you probably need to be quite a big company to run your own training contract scheme. So, Vodafone used to, may do again now, I'm not sure, Benny, but, big companies. Yeah, big companies will do it, but smaller ones, or if they've just set up in the UK, they probably won't. So it is a little bit more difficult to find out who does them. But what I would say is if you have a particular company that you're interested in, then go to their website, have a look around. It will usually say if they do that. If you link in with somebody on LinkedIn who works there and ask them, most people don't mind being approached by somebody who's showing an interest in their company, who's showing an interest in their legal department and wants to ask some questions. Like, don't be put off by thinking, oh, I don't really like doing this. Most people want to help.
Yeah. And I think that's a really interesting point, because that's one of the things that the SQE has brought about, has that flexibility for people to be able to access the in-house sector rather than private practice through opportunities of, maybe a limited period of time, as opposed to, as you pointed out, Chris, a sort of formalized 2-year training contract. But there may be other opportunities to become a paralegal and gain some experience in-house that way. Emma, I wonder if I could just ask you on that point. Obviously, you didn't go through private practice when you qualified. You've always been in-house, I believe, if that's my understanding.
I was in private practice as a trainee, but then moved straight on qualification. But yes, I don't think you're at a disadvantage if you choose to train in-house. And I get that question quite a lot. I think if you are certain you want to be a private practice lawyer, I wouldn't train in-house. I think a transition from being in-house to being in private practice would be challenging. Not because that it wouldn't be there wouldn't be opportunities. I think just skills wise, you get used to a certain way of working that would be hard to then change. I think particularly if you are someone that's maybe a career changer, or even if you've been working in retail and hospitality for a few years, a lot of the skills that make good in-house lawyers you will already have. You will know how to prioritize. You will be able to communicate, as Benny was talking about, and learn different styles of communication. You'd be comfortable picking up the phone to people. I worked at a call center for a bit, and that was the best training I had for being an in-house lawyer. Managing expectations and all those kind of things are so invaluable that I think you don't need to have a specific training contract at a specific law firm anymore. We've moved away from that in the legal sector.
Yeah. So it's about approaching those individual companies themselves, looking on their websites, approaching them for potential opportunities to explore being able to qualify in-house initially, rather than having to go through the sort of additional private practice route.
There will be information out there. It's just probably slightly harder to find than Linklaters training contracts,
For sure.
because they don't have the marketing budgets, if nothing else, that the Linklaters team will. So yeah, I think that they might be harder to find, but if you're sat on it and you do plenty of research, they do exist.
Fantastic. We've had another few questions in. A number of people already working in companies and working as paralegals or looking to qualify and continue to work for those businesses. Obviously, people will be coming at it from different areas of the sort of sector in terms of industries. And I wondered from the panelists as to how, I suppose, work differs across those industries. So Benny, obviously you're in communications. How is that different from perhaps work that you might do as an in-house lawyer in, I don't know, oil and gas, for example, or retail? Do you have any thoughts on that? Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. I guess, well, the first thing that comes to mind, I guess, is like sort of the regulators that you would interact with. I think that's probably a huge thing, like in terms of difference, because you have to be aware of obviously like who the regulators are, and sort of in terms of like compliance as well. I think that's how it would probably differ. But it's a bit hard to draw comparisons because I only have like a pretty specific bit of knowledge, but I guess that would be sort of my take on how it would differ. Yeah,
and that's absolutely right.
Yeah,
I was
Benny's absolutely right.
Yeah, the regulated industries. So there will be some companies, the really big companies in the UK will be subject to more rules than my tiny little business, or specific regulated sectors like healthcare, for example, will come with its own set of rules and regulations that you'll need to learn. But I think in respect to other sectors, there will be slightly different working hours, slightly different expectations, and it's mostly about finding what you're interested in, I would say. Don't know whether you agree with that, Chris.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's the regulated aspects. Telecoms, financial services, oil and gas will have its own, medical, etc. Lots of businesses aren't regulated. Peloton's not a regulated business. I think some roles you tend to have more specific things that you'll concentrate on. So, for example, I worked at a cybersecurity company where data privacy was obviously very important. Software licensing was very important because we sold that, and that was, there wasn't much else. I did lots of contracts selling the stuff. Peloton is much more broad business because there are tons of different parts of it, and so that I find more interesting because there's more breadth. So you can go down the route of being perhaps more specialized. I think insurance, financial services, banking, those kinds of things tend to be quite specialized, and there's lots of in-house opportunities there. I think the other piece to think about is, do you want to work in a mature business, or are you more interested in a startup or a UK or European entity of an American business? So because quite often you get big tech in the US will want to be trying to get out into the rest of the world, so they'll start a business in the UK or Germany or wherever. And I've spent quite a lot of time in my career being the first lawyer for a US company outside of the US and helping to set up an international business there, and that can be quite interesting. So there are lots of different ways. I think my route has made me have to be just more general in my approach and be able to kind of spot issues rather than necessarily be an expert in. You can't be an expert in everything. So I can spot things that I think that might be troubling. I might need to get some more advice on that, or I might need to look into it in more detail, versus being, a very specific financial services lawyer who will know everything about complying with the Financial Conduct Authority's rules and those kind of things. You can get both types of roles in-house.
Right. Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. We've had another few questions in just around, I suppose it's to the point we were talking about around trying to find the opportunities within the in-house sector. But when you were actually in, from a training and development perspective, what sort of opportunities are available in-house for lawyers to develop further compared to obviously the very structured training that is usually provided in private practice? Chris, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that you get probably a more structured legal training in private practice. That is what they're used to doing. They're used to having trainees. They're used to structuring it in a certain way. And I think, you know, it depends on what you like and what you're interested in. I think if you're really find that when you're studying that you've found a part of the law that you're super interested in, maybe a private practice role is the best role for you, because you can get really into that. You know, it might be tax law, it might be something else, but, you know, getting a expertise in that area is probably easier in private practice. I think development opportunities in-house, typically, I think you need to be, you need to own your own development a bit more. I think you will be part of a learning and development culture within your organization that applies to every single function in that company. So there will be potentially be broader opportunities for you to think outside of the legal realm and maybe go into a commercial role, or maybe go into a different part of the business. And there may be kind of leadership development type courses, more general skills-based courses that are available as well. But you will be encouraged to kind of own that and seek those out yourself more, I think, than in a private practice setting where it's a little bit more structured and layered by PQE.
Thank you, Chris. Benny, do you want to add to that, given that you're currently going through it?
Yes. So we've got trainees who are like doing their training contract, but they've been sort of hired internally, and paralegals as well. And I think sort of the main difference, obviously, I'm within our competition law team, so I'm not doing like the different rotations with like privacy or like deals or commercial or whatever. But I think like the benefit of that in my case is just being able to just ask that I would like to do this bit of work because I think it's interesting, and my management has been really receptive to that, and she'll be like, well, we can try and get you to like support someone that's doing that bit of work like within our team. So it's nice, but like Chris was saying, you have to take a bit of ownership and speak up and say, I would like to do so and so, and is there the opportunity for me to do that? And if there is, I don't think anyone would necessarily say no to that. So it's just being confident and having some direction of what you would like to do and what's interesting to you, and if there's scope within like the business for you to do that. Because I think where there isn't sort of like a structured program and you're kind of doing and trying to qualify through this SQE route on your own, essentially, you have to take that bit of ownership and sort of identify what you would like to get from your training. So you're very much in the driver's seat and just pushing through. Yeah.
Thank you, Benny. Emma, do you want to add to that? Anything?
I don't think there's a lot to add. I would just say that if you're someone who is currently working in an in-house team or is looking to work in a slightly smaller in-house team, don't be afraid to ask for budget for external training. I think a lot of more junior lawyers are fearful of that, but I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And provided you go along with a business case as to why you want to do that training, I can't see any reason that would be a bad idea. I agree with Chris that I think private practice law firms, because they've been doing it for so long, you get fed training down. You know, you can't escape it. 10 till 11, you will be in this particular meeting learning about this thing. So as an in-house lawyer, you have to be the kind of person that's like, I'm going to take myself off and learn about this thing for an hour. Or, as I say, I've found this training course or this free webinar, I'm going to sit down and join that. Even though I've got a busy day of my 50 things on the to-do list, I'm sitting down for an hour and listening to this thing because I want to upskill myself in this thing. So there's pros and cons. I think the real pro of it is you can direct that training, as Benny was talking about. You could go, I'm really interested in AI, for example. I'm going to be the expert on AI for my legal department, which is great.
I think it gives you that autonomy in a way, doesn't it? To a degree, which can be quite freeing. It's interesting. Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm very conscious of time. So I wondered whether I could possibly just sort of wrap up with a final question from each of you, if you don't mind. Perhaps if you just had one piece of advice that you would give to somebody thinking about either going into the into an in-house legal career or qualifying into an in-house legal career. I've had lots and lots of questions from students here and people saying, how do I get into in-house compared to the very standardized route to private practice? I just wondered what your thoughts were, any advice that you might give around why somebody might consider in-house as a career path. Emma, do you want to start?
Yes. So first, shameless plug, and I did check I could do this in advance, but I run separate free webinars for students. There's no catch. I just host them because I like doing it. But I bring in different legal people that have done different things, squiggly career routes and that kind of thing. It's called the Inclusi Club, and you can find it on my LinkedIn page. So if you do want to hear more from in-house lawyers, that may be useful to you. My overall top tip would be to, I think nowadays it is so difficult to get legal work experience or your first sort of training contract or your first position. I would say go, if that is you, go and do something else first. It doesn't really matter what it is. You will find a path to get to where you were meant to be. It may not look exactly how you wanted it to look, or it may not look exactly how you thought it might look. But if you go and take a job in marketing or work at university for a while or something, you will meet people through that job and learn skills and build connections that will get you onto a path that maybe means you don't qualify for a few years, but you've got some experience and you can transfer that to your first job. And I think that's just becoming more common. And I think you will be a better lawyer for it.
Absolutely. Those transferable skills are absolutely vital. Thank you, Emma. Benny, over to you.
Yeah, I think just adding on to what Emma's just said, I don't think you need to have this sort of grand plan of how the next 20 years of your life is going to look like and how you're going to get there. If you can, that's really impressive. But I don't think you need to do that. Just like being open to doing things differently, trying out different, just different things that might be open to you into shaping your career. And I think nothing's ever final. So on that, just take control of what you can and just experience as much as you can, because it all adds up. So I think my thing for today is just experience is experience. So no matter how you get it, just get as much as you can, because it will help you even in ways you don't really expect it to. Yeah,
and be open to those opportunities. Yes, exactly. And as you say, Benny, no career is linear. So take the opportunities that you can. It's multifaceted. Finally, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I think try to think broadly about where you might find an opportunity from. I think lots of firms run intern programs. Peloton does a program with Field Fisher called the Diversity Access Scheme, where we try to bring people in from underserved communities who maybe haven't had access to law as much and give them some work experience. I think lots of firms are doing that. I think there's organizations like the 10,000 Black Interns, there's the 93% Club. There's lots of organizations now that are trying to broaden the route into law and help people get in that way. And I would encourage people to kind of look at those, find them on LinkedIn, contact people. We've got a lawyer in my team who was a paralegal at WeWork for 5 years before she was able to persuade them to do a training contract. And, you know, if you're in there, you're doing a good job, you're valuable to them, and you say, I want to do a training contract, can you make that happen for me? If you're someone that the company wants to invest in, they will invest in you. And she was the first person that they'd done that for, and she made the case to them to do that. So, you know, there is always a way if you're being the best you can be, and people will help make things happen for you. So I would say take those opportunities that you can, and do as well as you can, and then be curious, ask lots of questions, be helpful, try and own your own development, and hopefully things will come. But I do acknowledge it is, you know, it's daunting. I think it's a lot harder to get into the law than it was when I was looking at it, but there are more diverse routes in now. So try and think broadly.
It's a great way to end, Chris. Thank you. Think broadly, be open to opportunities. It will come, it may not come straight away, but ultimately any experience that you do get is going to help you for the future. So on that, thank you, Benny, Chris, and Emma, for all of your insights. It's been a fantastic discussion. I'm sorry to everybody that we've not been able to answer all the questions. I tried to reduce and consolidate some of the themes to a couple of questions. So thank you. Some great insight on the in-house sector. It really shows the value of working in-house, both for your career and the opportunities that exist. And we actually are running another in-house focused session next Thursday. So for anybody who's interested, of course, we can send you the link for that particular webinar as well. But thank you all very, very much.
That's fantastic. So to wrap it up, thank you so much, Rob, and to our panel for such amazing insights into in-house law and being an in-house lawyer. Now, I mentioned at the start of the event that there's a competition involved related to today's event, and you are now eligible for this competition that BARBRI is running. So my colleague will post a link in the comments that will lead to our page that has all the details, and you will also get an email tomorrow that contains these details as well. So the event is not over yet. We still have half an hour to get into the networking site, and you can do that by clicking on Expo on the left-hand sidebar, where you can meet the speakers and also BARBRI SQE experts. I would ask our speakers to hang back for a minute so that we can help you join the session. And again, thank you to everyone for joining in today, this afternoon, and we hope you enjoyed the networking. Thank you.